So today's session, as you all know, is about Factor, and timely enough given there are some application deadlines coming up. But this is also part of a Funding 101 series or thread through our webinars. So last week, our Outreach and Development Director, Gabrielle Roubain, did a Funding 101 overview, and that's available on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. And moving forward, Andrea is working on setting up additional deep dive sessions with different funders. So be sure to keep your eye out for those as well. And now I'd like to pass things over to Anthony Johnson from Factor so he can dive right in and give you all of that great information you're going to need for your upcoming application. Take it away, Anthony.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Quick question first. Can anyone even see me or hear me? I just want to make sure. Can you see me or hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. All right. So yeah, I am the project coordinator for sponsorship and outreach at Factor today. And so what I like to do is basically, give you an overview of what we do, talk about two of our main programs. And yeah, we're going to go right into it. So one quick thing I'll say is I know some of you may already know us, you may have already dealt with us, and some others may have never dealt with us. So I'm going to go over a little bit of basic information too, just to make sure everyone is up to speed. And then we'll get into the big details of the programs. And with that said, let's get started. So our agenda. So like I said, we'll talk a bit about the basics, getting started. I'll talk about our programs, and then I'll show you some resources, and then we'll handle some questions. So Factor stands for the Foundation Assisting Canadian Talent on Recordings. And what we do is we give grants to Canadian musicians and companies to make and promote the Canadian music industry. So a word on diversity and inclusion. We are committed to reflecting the diversity of Canada's population, and we're committed to ensuring universal access to all funds and services, including all musical expressions and talent. And in our work, we encourage these values of diversity within the sector. Okay, so our budget is provided by the Government of Canada through the Canada Music Fund, and also by Canada's private radio broadcasters. So in terms of amounts, we get about $30 million, well, that was last year, and we pay out the majority of that. Now, our program supports Canadian artists and companies and projects in any language other than French. Now, a question we often get is, why not French? And the reason is, there is actually an equivalent to Factor called Musique Action in Quebec, and they handle everything French. So if you have something in French, you go to them, and if you have something in English or anything else, you come to us. And our funding is project-based, so you can access it through various programs, which I'll get into in a minute. All right. Now, the very first step to getting started is understanding who's eligible for the funding. So we need you or at least half of the band of the artists to be Canadian citizens or permanent residents of Canada in order to be eligible. So we'll need people to have a passport, birth certificate, citizenship card, PR card, or SCIS card. Okay, that's the first condition. Now, we have various types of profiles. And this is, I'm going to talk about this for a little bit because it's actually very important and relevant for afterwards. So the first type is the user profile. So we look at it just basically as a login. So you have your email address, you have a password, that's how you enter our portal. That's also where you upload the proof of citizenship. And each band member needs to have their own. If you are a manager managing an artist, you also should have a user profile, and the artist will give you authorization to handle the grants, work on it together, basically. So everyone who's ever logging into the portal should have their own profile for this. Next is the applicant profile. This one is essentially the entity that gets into business with Factor. It's the bank account. Well, it's the one whose name should match the bank account. So if we have an artist, and the artist, let's say, isn't incorporated, so doesn't have a company, they just have their own personal bank account, then the applicant profile name should be the real name of the artist to match that bank account name. If it's a company, then it should be the name, well, I'm assuming the company has its own account, then the applicant name should match that bank account name as well. So yeah, the applicant profile is the one that basically handles creating the application and submitting it and gets the money, and everything has to be in that name. And then we have an artist profile, and that's what we use to have a snapshot of who the artist is and what point they are in their career. So that's where you should upload the bio for the artist. If there are several members, because it's a band, you can add all of them in that profile. And that is also where you will pick the best primary musical genre for this artist. This is also super important about the genre, and I'll tell you why in a bit. So yeah, these are the various types of profiles. Oops, sorry, trying to get to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so we have something called an artist rating system. Essentially what it is, it determines which programs people can apply to. Not only that, but also the levels of funding. So when you sign up with Factor, you're automatically assigned a rating called General. It's about 90 to 95% of people are General. But you can, if you fulfill certain criteria, you can apply to reach an artist 2 or an artist 3 rating. So we have some kind of a baseline on the website that kind of shows the kinds of numbers, but it's algorithmic and it changes every time. So it's take those numbers with a grain of salt. But basically, if you see yourself having millions of streams on Spotify or having a lot of tour revenue, quite large numbers, then is the time to start thinking about perhaps trying to get a higher rating. And then with that, you would be able to get more funding. But for the 2 programs that I'm gonna look over today, everyone is eligible for that regardless of the artist rating. And yeah, these profiles are reviewed twice a year, so in August and in February. Now, something else, because we are in an MMF session today, so I wanted to quickly mention this. It's possible for artist managers as well to create applicant profiles. So not user profile, but applicant profiles. That's provided they meet certain criteria as well, which are listed on this slide. So must have been in business for 2 years, have to submit some financial statements, need to manage at least 2 Canadian artists. With this profile, if you're eligible for it, to have this profile, you can apply for another application, which we're not really going to go into big detail because I really want to focus on the other 2, but it's called Support for Eligible Music Companies. And essentially, through that, you can get funding for business development activities, such as creating a new website. We can give some funding for that, or if you need graphic designs, things like that. So that's something just to keep in mind for the managers. And I'm really happy if you want to email me afterwards and ask more questions about that. I can talk about it. But anyway, let's jump into the 2 programs that everyone came here to see today. So artist development and juried sound recording. Okay, so the first one, artist development, which is arguably, I think, our most popular program for artists and self-managed artists. This one gives you funding that goes towards 1 year of artist development activities, which fit in various categories. So we have sound recording, touring, showcasing, video, and marketing. So the way it works, you apply. If you get accepted, Factor will give you $2,000, and you can spend these $2,000 in any of those categories. However, we fund 75%. So what that means is you have to show that you're spending an eligible budget of $2,667, because 2,000 is 75% of 2,667. Now, something I quickly like to mention, in terms of expenses, what is eligible, what is not. Most of the time, it's obviously, everything is listed on the website, but it's very important that you reach out to us in the application and you kind of ask questions to your project coordinator, because they can help you in evaluating what you can spend money on and what you can't. But for instance, before COVID, capital expenses, which is equipment, were actually not eligible. And they still generally are not, except for now, we're actually allowing people to spend 10% of the 2,000 on that. So capital expense can be something like a microphone or speakers or headphones, anything like that. You can spend $200 on that. So to give you, though, a little bit of an overview of the kinds of activities in general that we see people use the money on, for sound recording, it would be things like going to a studio and paying for some recording time. So you record some singles there or an album. Also things like hiring a sound engineer to mix and master your song, or hiring a producer to help with the production. Touring, obviously, you can also spend money on that, expenses related to touring. You can also do showcasing. For video, anything to do with creating a music video. So hiring a director, creative director, hiring someone to do all the editing, all of that is eligible. For marketing, something that's really awesome is everything to do with social media ads is eligible too. So you can buy Facebook ads, Instagram ads, all of that is part of things that you can spend those $2,000 on. Now, in terms of what you need to apply, you'll need just a few things. So, and we're actually going to go into more detail on this later when I show you the resources, but I'm still going to tell you now. You'll need a bio of the artist. You'll have to submit an artist development plan. So there's actually a form in our portal with a couple of questions where you'll basically say, you know, where are you at in your career right now? And where do you plan to be a year from now? And how is this money going to help you with your plan, with your career, basically? And you have to submit one MP3 assessment track. Now, I believe it says somewhere on the website that it can be a demo, but this is just me, my opinion. I would encourage you to submit something more than a demo, but an actually finished track, because you want to put your best foot forward. One thing though, it has to be an unreleased track. So if you're sitting on a song that's completely finished, but that's not out yet, that's what I would say you should put out rather than just an unfinished demo, because yeah, you want to make the best possible application. So that's more or less it for artist development, but I'm going to go into more detail on it afterwards. So don't worry, we will revisit this. And now let's talk. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, we've got a question just wondering if you're allowed to submit more than one assessment track.
So for juried sound recording, yes, which is the next program, but for artist development, no, you should submit one. So submit your best track that's unreleased.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions, or, because yeah, I can cover questions during the session as well, actually. That's totally cool.
There's also one about choosing the best primary genre. Was that something you said you were going to talk
yes.
about later? Or
yeah.
do you want to get into it now?
I'll talk about it later, but I'll talk about it now too, because it's so important. Essentially, the jurors, so the people that review your application, it's actually not Factor. We're not the ones deciding who gets funded. It's external people, and all of them select a genre that they are specialists in, okay? So you want to make sure that when you pick a genre and you submit your song, it matches that as well as possible, because if, let's say, you're a pop artist and you submit a hip-hop song, this hip-hop song is going to be looked at by people who specialize in pop, and they might just be really confused. It's just not good for your application if you confuse the jurors. So that's why I would say just be really careful with what genre you select. And yeah, I'll talk about this even more in a bit, but yeah, I hope that kind of answered the gist of it here. Any other questions for AD?
Yeah, also wondering if you are a community band, like a nonprofit, are you eligible for
a
funding?
Nonprofit band. So what is that exactly?
Maybe we can get some of those details in the chat, the person who asked that, and
okay,
we can talk about it again later.
So we'll revisit this, but I'll say though, just in general, nonprofits are also eligible to create applicant profiles, and we've funded nonprofits in other programs, so I assume it would be okay in artist development too. But one thing I will say though, and again, I'll talk about this even more detail afterwards too, but Factor was created by the government, but also by radio broadcasters. And so our focus is to really build a career and supporting the industry. So while you don't need to have profits expected in your plan, we do hope that the people who apply are people that really would like to be, artists that are gonna grow their career and grow their fan base. So I don't know how relevant what I said is to this question, but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, we've got an update. So it's like an adult jazz band, a nonprofit organization that.
Okay, I mean, I would assume they would be eligible for that. One thing though, You know what? I think it is, but I am going to research this a little more. If you can send me an email asking for that, I'm actually going to type my email in. Let me find the chat here. Oh, here it is. Johnson. Pretty sure this is fine, but if you can shoot me an email, I will get back to you later today or tomorrow morning on that. Okay? Any other questions on artist development for now?
Talking about the track, the submission track, it's supposed to be non-released. Is that just for sound recording or for all aspects of the program, for example, touring?
Okay, so artist development is one big program that encompasses several categories of money that you can spend the money on. So what I think the question is then is it okay to have toured with this song without having it been officially released? If that's the question, then absolutely, yep, that's fine. It just has to be a track that's not commercially available in Canada. So commercially available means, on iTunes, Spotify, wherever. So if you've created the song and you've toured with it, but you haven't released it, you can totally apply with it. That's fine. I hope that answers the question. Okay. If there aren't any more questions for AD right now, we'll go into JSR. And again, I'm going to go into more detail on AD afterwards when I show you some resources. So I am not forgetting about this topic. All right, moving on to JSR. Juried sound recording. The point of this application now is to give you funding to create a full-length, professionally recorded, mixed mastered album, and also to help you promote it. So this is a much larger project than the artist development, and this is reflected also in the maximum amount you can get, which is $67,500. So again, we give you 75% of the funding, so that means that you'd have to spend $90,000 to get all this money, right? So again, we also, in terms of the categories that you can spend money on, it's a little similar to AD. So you can apply to also for marketing, tour support, showcase, video, radio marketing as well. And in terms of the application materials, there's a little more here, obviously, again, because it's a more competitive program. So you're going to have to describe your goals and your expected results. I would say here, be as detailed as possible. Really talk in depth and show that you really understand where you are now and where you would like to go. In terms of the songs you have to submit, you have to give 2 this time. They have to be unreleased. And here, the difference with AD is that ideally they should be unfinished in some way. And the reason for that is you have to also include in the application a plan on what you want to do with those songs, what you want to modify with them. So it can be something like, these are 2 demos, and I plan to record them better in a studio. Or it can be, this is a track that's done, but it's not mixed yet, so I'm going to pay someone to mix and master it. Or it can be, this is finished, but I'm going to change it. I'm going to remaster it, or I'm going to add in a verse or do a remix. It can be all kinds of things, but it has to be in some way, there has to be something that you want to change. That's something that's really important. Then you have to submit a detailed marketing plan. And when I say detailed, is really as detailed as possible. Really show that you've studied what marketing plans are normally like, studied your audience, studied where you're going to distribute your album, what you're going to do to get it out there. This is really important. Then you'll have to include also just the start date of when you plan recording, because it shouldn't be too far off of a date from when you apply. And then you have to submit your bio as well. So this is for JSR. I'm also going to show some resources on that. So maybe I can take a couple questions now, but we'll go into more detail on that in a bit. Let me know if there are questions, Andrea.
So we did have someone asking for clarification on capital expenses. And
yep.
if they have to spend the funds first with the grant to get the funds back.
Yes, great question. So no, we give you the money first, and then you can, well, actually, no, sorry, that's not totally right. Your expenses are eligible from the time you apply. So when you submit the application, any expense after that is eligible. So it actually takes a few months to get your answer. So technically, if you're submitting, let's say for the next deadline for JSR, which is October 29th, so I think that's next week, technically everything you spend October 30th onwards is eligible, but you're not going to get the money immediately. It'll take a few months. But otherwise, though, yeah, as soon as you get your answer, you get the money, and then you still have a year to spend money, and all of that is there. Now, what you do have to do, though, and actually it's a good question because then I can talk about this. You have a completion report that you have to submit at the end. And in that completion report is where you send all your expenses in a nice zip file, and you show what you've spent it on. And there is a point where it has to be all eligible expenses. So yeah, that matters. That's really important to get this part right. But otherwise, yeah, you get the money first and then you can spend it. Hope that answered the question.
Great. So a few more questions here.
Yeah.
With the uncertainties of COVID affecting touring and venue openings, wondering if the marketing plan, it's okay that it's a little bit speculative, or if you've got tips on how to kind of deal with that in your marketing plan.
Yes. So the least speculative, the better, usually. However, it's okay. One thing, because I mean, we're flexible, and the jurors, they all know too that it's hard to exactly do what you'll say you'll do. One thing though that, yes, it's a great question because I can mention this too. In JSR, the only parts that you have to submit immediately first is your plans for sound recording. And this is actually for $10,000. So first you submit your plan in terms of actually creating your album. And then once that gets approved, you can apply, you can submit for other components, basically we call them, for the touring and the video and marketing and things like that. So that means you can get accepted. And then depending on what's happening with COVID, you can start submitting your plans for touring a little closer to the date so that there's less uncertainty. I would actually encourage you to only do the sound recording part first rather than trying to do everything. So yeah, I hope that answers the question more or less.
Thank you. So a few more here. Just looking for clarification about payment. Do you get half of the money first and then the second half after completion is submitted? Is that how things are?
No. You get the money first. You have a year to spend it on your project. And then so let's say you get, let's look at AD, let's say, okay? You get $2,000. It's immediately the minute your application is accepted, you'll get the 2,000. And then from that day, you have exactly 1 year to do all your spending and submit your completion. So you spend your 2,000. Actually, you have to spend more, $2,667. So 667 out of pocket or from another funder or whoever. And then at the end, in your completion project, you'll show a big budget and you'll put all the amounts, everything you spent this $2,667 on. That's how it works. So yeah, you get all the money up front, which is pretty cool.
Excellent. Okay. Same for the JSR.
Yeah.
Okay, and just sorry, there's another question.
Oh, that's okay. I'm here for that.
Confirming that unreleased track doesn't mean SoundCloud. So can you have something up on SoundCloud and still have it qualify as unreleased?
You should avoid that. It should really be, if you can, completely unreleased, as in not there. However, I mean, I don't know if I should be saying that, but like maybe perhaps if it's on SoundCloud, but then you just take it, like you make it private for a while, perhaps that's okay. But I would say for questions, for things like that, where it's kind of like blurred lines, it's good to talk to your project coordinator and they'll really advise you better. Because this is, I guess it's probably more of a case-by-case basis. So yeah, if you can avoid it though, it's better to make it completely unreleased.
Okay, good to know. Also, someone was asking about, where did we go here? Social reach and number of followers. They'd heard that if you don't have thousands of followers, you can't get factor grants. So I'm just wondering if you can
No, that's completely not true. No one, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you say in the plan. If you, I mean, I know personally some people who've had 100 or 200 followers and who did get some funding. So what matters is what you say in your plan. If you don't have a lot of followers, just make sure you have a good plan that explains how you will get, let's say, jump from, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 followers, for example. to be honest though, follow us too isn't really the big focus. It's more, is your business plan commercially viable? That's the most important. With that said, because I'm realizing I have a lot of questions that will probably be covered in the next slides. If it's okay, I'd like to just move on a little bit in the slides, and then if there are more questions here, we'll go into them. Is that okay?
Just one super quick clarification for
Okay.
the payment. Is it getting it all up front? Is that a change? Oh, I see Karina is answering it in the chat, saying that for the JSR, there is still an advance and then a final payment. So it is just artist development that you get the full 2,000 up front.
Yeah. Okay, so if it's okay, I'm just going to move on quickly for.
Please do.
Great, and then I will have time for all the questions, and I can stay after too, so no problem for that. All right, next. So the evaluation process. So I spoke about this a little bit, but I have to talk about it in detail because it's so important for everyone to understand. Like I said, the jurors are actually not factor. We're not grading your applications. These are all people who have at least 5 years experience in the music business, and they have all kinds of roles. So there are artists, agents, producers, and the list goes on. You as an artist or manager, so when I say you, it's the audience, you may be eligible to be a juror too. And if you are, I would actually encourage you to apply to be a juror, because this is a great way afterwards to understand how the process works. And then we find that it makes it easier for people after having done that to get grants. So I would encourage you to do that. And we have a jury supervisor who handles all these applications. I'm going to drop her email in the chat later, and I would encourage you to send her an email for that because it's a good opportunity. Now, what do they look at when they score your applications? They look at your music, obviously, your vocals, the musicality, so the composition, your marketing plan, and your team. So the team thing is especially for the JSR, that would include, who are you planning to work with? Because you're not going to do everything completely by yourself. There's going to be other people involved there. So make sure that you submit all this information, submit the bio of everyone involved, give as much good and relevant info, and show that you've really thought about it, okay? So that's for the evaluation process. Now, in terms of deadlines and things like that, you can only apply to one of these two programs per year, basically. So they're every 6 months. If you decide to apply to AD on November 12th, the coming one, then you can't apply either to AD or to JSR until November of next year. However, if you're in the top 20 that don't get funding in this round, you'll actually be allowed to reapply at the next deadline, which is in 6 months. So yeah, that's something to know. Now, before each deadline, you have 3 months to create, edit, and submit your application. And we really encourage everyone to start as early as possible because you just never know. It's also good to take the time to gather support materials as well, letters of support, things like that. So start as early as you can. Something else I want to mention, some tips for you to be successful. The first one is understand your funder. So what do we mean by that? Well, there is Factor in Canada, but there are other funding agencies as well. Every funding agency was created for a different reason, and perhaps the underlying philosophy isn't the same for all of them. For instance, for Factor, we consider artistic merit, so how good your song is, but we also really consider your business plan because, like I said, the goal for Factor is to strengthen the industry as a whole. We want to see more artists that can live off of their music and really be touring and doing all these things. So we consider artistic merit and business plans. Another tip is, again, well, I said that already, but start preparing as early as you can. That's always a good idea. Make sure you read the program guidelines. There's so much more info. I'm actually going to show you some of these in a bit. Connect with your project coordinator. That's an important one. So I am a project coordinator at Factor. There are plenty of us here. The minute you create your profile, you're actually going to be assigned to one of us. And our job is basically to be your friend at Factor. We're here to answer all your questions. So sometimes, there are artists maybe that they want to figure everything out on their own and they never really talk to their project coordinator, and that's fine. But I would really encourage you to ask questions if you can, because it'll also avoid making mistakes by accident. For instance, in terms of expenses that aren't eligible, if you're not sure, you can just send us an email and ask, and we're there to help you and really advise. So connect with your project coordinator and build the relationship, because we're really here to help. That's what we want to do. We want to see people get funded. Another one is, if someone else is writing your grant, make sure you read it. So I know here we have self-managed artists and also managers who may be working on grants for the artists. So what we're saying here is make sure that you're both really in tune with each other and that all the information is accurate. You can also talk to previous recipients. So we actually have a Factor funded list, and it's all public. You can reach out to artists and ask them how they did get the grant, ask for feedback and advice. That's totally cool. That's a cool thing you can do. Now, when your project has been approved, make sure that you keep track of your receipts. This is really important because, like I said, in your completion, you're going to have to submit a zip file with everything. So really try not to use cash if you can avoid it. Another thing is, make sure that you understand our logo and acknowledgement requirements. So when you do get the funding, you're going to get a big letter with lots of links and with things that you have to do. And one of them is, we have our Factor logo, and if you create a big album and you'll go music video with the money, then you at some point you'll just have to use the logo somewhere. So just make sure that you know this and remember it. And then another thing is, if your plans change, contact your coordinator. So going back now to a question that was asked a bit earlier, someone asked about touring and uncertainty. This is where the flexibility with Factor works. Is basically, we're actually very flexible. The thing is, though, we need communication. So if in your plan you say you're going to do this, and then something changes and you can't do it, reach out to your project coordinator as soon as you know that you can't do it. And in all likelihood, we'll be able to work something out. The problem is more if your plans change and no one knows, and then you submit your completion with something that's completely different from what you were approved for. And that's when it might cause an issue. And again, the reason for all these rules is all the money that we get comes from the government, and it comes with some rules and things that you can spend money on and things that you can't spend money on. So that's why we're really saying communicate with us as much as you can. And now, just a few resources for everyone. So we have our website. Honestly, I highly recommend check it. Well, actually, I'm going to show you in a bit, so you will see it. But in general, check it out. There are so many how-to guides and step-by-step instructions and forms and templates. Really helpful stuff. We have our guidelines. It's always good to read them to get a bit of a refresher. We have our annual reports. You can check it out for a few other pieces of information. Our database of recipients, I've already mentioned it. Regional education coordinators. So if you are Factor, we are here in Toronto, right? However, if you are from anywhere else, let's say another province, there are actually people, for instance, Music BC, Music Saskatchewan, Music Alberta. They are regional education coordinators, and what they do is they are actually here to also give you feedback related to Factor. So if you have a question and perhaps you don't want to reach out to your project coordinator, you can actually also ask these regional education coordinators, and they're there to help and to advise. So you can talk to them as well. And then your project coordinator, well, I already mentioned. And you can sign up for our newsletter for lots of new information. And that more or less is it for my slides. And now I guess I could take maybe a small round of questions, and then I'll show you some of the resources. Let me know if there are questions.
Anthony, I think you're good to hop into some of those resources. And
great, okay.
Know that we will be sharing the slide deck via email after. So some of the links and different things that Anthony's sharing, you'll have coming to your inbox soon.
Brilliant. Okay, could you let me know if you can see the website? Because I can't see what my screen is sharing. I'm not sure. Is it sharing the screen?
Yes.
The website, applicant resources?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so everyone watching, we have a section on our website called Applicant Resources, and we have so many documents that you can look at that really give you some guidance on how to do all these things. Now, I wanted to show you what those programs actually look like. So this is what it looks like for artist development. It hasn't changed since 2019, so this is it. So this is exactly what it looks like when you're going to submit. These are all the questions. So what is the genre of your sound recording? Stick to the to the right genre. Artist bio, you upload your bio. Your website, a question that comes up sometimes is, do I need to have a website? It's better if you do, it always helps. But if you don't have one, that's fine. You can put a social media, your Instagram or your Facebook. That's okay. Project start date, so when do you plan on beginning your activities? Now for your plan, these are the exact questions that you have. So detail where you are in your career, provide a strategy for growth in the year, and describe your challenges, ambitions, and where you hope to be. You have 2,000 characters, which actually isn't very long. So I would encourage you, if you can, to really, fill it, say everything that you need to say in there. And then the second question, estimate how much you'll spend, include all spends. So yeah, you actually have these, they're all columns and you can just decide. So one thing that I'll say too, which is a very frequent question is, what happens if, let's say I put 1,000 here and 500 there, and then I want to change everything? Again, that's totally fine, but just tell your project coordinator first. That's really the communication thing is important. And then this other question too, describe how these activities will contribute to your overall strategy. So yeah, this is a fairly simple application. There isn't much to do for artist development. And then you enter your track. You just have to give a bit of information on the track. Now, there is question again about how much of it was made by Canadians, because again, we do want to support the Canadian industry, so it needs to be more than 50%. And you select your track. And then the public funding section is just to basically say, are you being funded by another funding agency? And if you do, you have to tell us. Yeah, so that's that. Now, this is it for artist development, more or less. Now, I wanted to show you, this is the guidelines, so you can look at that as well. And there's even more information than everything I just said. But the part that I wanted to show here that's really important is this. So jurors will look at your application and are going to have this, and they'll be scoring you. So when you submit your track and when you submit your business plan and everything, try to consider all of these points here. So as you can see, for artist development, 75% of the grading happens to be for music. So music is still the most important part, but still the business plan, well, the artist development plan, 25% is still quite a bit of an amount. So make sure that you have everything here that's all taken care of. So that's it for artist development. Now for JSR, same thing, I wanted to show you what it looks like. First, you have to describe your goals. So here, 4,000 characters, it's a little longer. And then same thing, you get those questions about your genre, putting your bio, and your marketing plan. So I'm going to show you this template in a sec too. This is super helpful. And then adding a bit of information about in which territories you're going to release, the format, the label, if you have a label, if you're independent, are you the artist, distribution, and then the song. And then here, as you can see, you have to submit your 2 songs, and then what changes do you intend to make to those tracks to prepare them for the final album. So yeah, make sure that there's something that you need to change, because you have to say something here. One thing too that I'll mention that has been a question in the past is, can you release lots of singles instead of albums? Absolutely. You just have to make sure that there is an album at the end, all in one. But if you would like to do this pretty modern methods that I'm seeing a lot now, where instead of an album, it's kind of like a playlist where you just release the song one by one. As long as at the end it's an album, then that's fine. So yeah, keep that in mind. And that's actually something that you can mention in the marketing plan too. So that's for this. Now, in terms of where you're graded for JSR, the breakdown is a little bit different. Here you can see that your marketing plan and your presentation and your team, which I consider these 2 things, the business plan is a little more, it's 40%. So you really have to make sure that your plan here is on point in order to get all the points that you would like. So yeah, make sure that you do have a team. And again, if you don't, just still try to talk about at least who maybe you'll hire to do stuff for you with some of these funds, okay? That's really important. Now I wanna just show you this guide. So this is something, I don't know how many people know about it, but probably I would like more people to know, so this is why I'm trying to show you. And this is all again in the applicant resources, it's there. So we have a marketing plan template. You don't have to copy it, but it's just to give you maybe an idea if you've never done one before. And again, it's just to help so that you have really lots of things to consider and to say. So I just want to show you this briefly. Giving an artist overview. So this is really your time to show off and say all the great things you've done. So, have you been touring? Have you been winning awards, or I don't know, all the things you've done? Make sure that you give us that. Give as much details about the album as possible. So, things also like in which studio are you gonna record it, and who's mixing it, who's mastering it. And all these people, by the way, you can include them in the team, right? Your producer, your engineer, even your studio, all of that counts. Track listing, so how many songs are you doing? What are the credits? Give some details again. So like I said, your producers, your musicians, also the people who do your artworks and your videos. And here, this is the really important part, is your target market. So who are you actually trying to promote this to? Make sure that you show the jurors that you really have thought about who your listeners are. So, the more information you can get or give on the demographic is good. Please do that. Then your team, again, well, I mentioned it, but it's here there too. Describe who you're working with and what their roles clearly are. Publicity, so give details on your campaign. For instance, are you going to start with Facebook ads and then Instagram, or are you going to do something else? I don't know. Just make sure that it's detailed and that you really have it thought out. Print advertising, if you plan on doing that, you can include it. Radio and TV is great. If you can do that, include it as well. Your online plans as well. Your branding tools, so you're going to be making posters, flyers, shirts. Distribution, where are you going to distribute it? Is it going to be only digital, or is it going to be digital and CDs, or is it going to be only physical? I don't know. Make sure you talk about that. And then your videos, of course, explain which videos you plan to do for which songs, and explain why and how it's going to do well. And then for touring as well, give as much info as you can. So that is pretty much it for the resources that I wanted to show. But again, keep in mind there are plenty to check out. And I guess now, if there are more questions, I'm super happy to talk about it. So let me know.
Right,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. I also, the 15% admin fee, somebody is asking about that one. Is that an expense that artists can claim?
It depends on the program, but for AD and JSR, I don't think so, no. That's more something for like collective initiatives, which is it's an events-based program for big conferences, things like that. Yeah. Anything else?
We have a good one from Dave. For artist development program, what is the best way to legitimize costs? So he's asking, I'm thinking history of making that kind of cost, projected budget, timing of budget, and expected goals. So yeah, how do you show which costs are, how do you legitimize your expenses? And is it useful to include a timeline for the project?
So I'm not sure what legitimize means. I think it could be to make us understand that those are real expenses. Is that what it means?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so if yes, great question.
Eligible expenses, yeah.
Great question. Okay, so first step, I would say, talk to your project coordinator first about your expenses, just to say, hey, I want to spend on this and that, and they'll tell you this is good, this is not good. First thing. Second thing, in terms of just us knowing that you have spent it, in your completion, you're going to be actually sending proofs of payment and receipts. So, and that can be, the proof of payment can be like a credit card thing, or whatever, e-transfer, all of that, and then also the receipts. So that's in terms of us knowing for sure that this expense has been made, and you actually have to do that. This is proof of payment. You can't just get money and then you don't tell us where you spent it. So that's one thing. And then I think there was a question about timing. Mm-hmm. So like just...
I think just wondering if it's useful to include a timeline for the project, which is Yes.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Yeah, honestly, I would say it's even better if you do, because it shows that you've really thought about it. So if, let's say, you're gonna say, I plan to spend 500 in the first 2 months on recording my song, and then the next 3 months I'm gonna spend it on marketing. That's good, because it kind of shows us the journey. And again, I say us, but it's not for Factor, it's for the jurors. So you have to think of, and I say, really, when you think of jurors, think of yourself as a musician. If another musician gives you their plan, try to think, look at, like, what are things that you think would make it look more legit versus something that looks like it hasn't been thought out at all and it's all over the place, right? So you would probably, if someone that you don't know is giving you a plan like this, most likely you'd like it to be organized and detailed. So it's exactly the same. It's like that. Sorry, really long answer, but that's important.
Great answer. Someone else is wondering if you can give us a sense of the success rate for both the artist development and jury sound recording programs.
Yes, great question. Let me show that, actually. All right. Give me 1 second, okay? I'm just finding it. It is in our annual report, which is actually why, we tell people to look at the annual report. So give me 1 second. I'm just pulling it up and I'm going to show you. Just as a rule of, not rule of thumb, but just kind of from my head, I believe it's around 35% or so. But I'm just going to show, because at least here you can see it and it's there for everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, Patrick has shared some stats. He says it's 33% for artist development and 18% for jury sound recording in the last round. So,
well, then,
thank you, Patrick.
There you go. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. I'm still sending the annual. I'm just putting it now in the chat for everyone to see. Another thing, sorry, I know there are questions, but I want to say this too. If you would like to be a juror, please reach out to our juror person. I'm just typing her email in here so that everyone has it. Okay, her name is Natasha Roldan. If you would like to apply to be a juror, just send her an email and then she'll take you through the process. Okay? So yeah. Oh, and I realized I sent the annual report, but to one person privately. Oops. That was an accident.
That's fine.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Great. Any more questions?
We do. Adrian had a question. He's wondering. They're wondering about the marketing for non-Factor funded recordings program. Mm-hmm. Are you comfortable diving into that a little bit?
I can, but it's we got to be not careful. But yeah, what's the question?
The question is, would you be able to confirm the list of services for which streams are counted and how, for example, YouTube streams would be defined? He says he's got one album very close to the 5.25 million mark, so every stream counts.
Okay. I believe Spotify for sure, yes. YouTube, I don't know, but I would think that it is counted. But I'll be honest with you, like as of right now, I'm not completely sure. So Adrian, please send me an email about this and I'll get back to you today or tomorrow. Can you do that, Adrian?
I'm sure
Hope Adrian is still here.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah. But, and I'll just quickly throw this here. The reason we don't talk about this one, I mean, I wasn't planning on talking about it today, is that it's not accessible for everyone, whereas JSR and AD really is. So it's like, you can be someone who's never heard of Factor until today, but you can create your account today and you're eligible for JSR right now. But for MPN, you're not. There's all these criteria and it's a bit difficult. So yeah.
Okay. I'm just having a look to see if there's other questions that I missed. Amy, are you seeing anything else? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that...
Yeah, I don't think we asked this question about... oh, now there's more coming in, I've lost it. Does the marketing plan, so just clarification about whether the marketing plan does have to be submitted at the same time as the sound recording application for the JSR.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, it does.
You have to include it. Yeah. Because yeah, it's very competitive. And as much as the music can be really good, there has to be a plan attached to it, which shows, what you plan to do with it. So yeah.
And I believe, like you had mentioned, that you're encouraging people just to apply for the sound recording project or portion to start. And if you get accepted or your application, is approved, then you're recommending apply for your touring.
The other
At that
components.
point, you can submit an updated marketing plan, I believe.
Oh yeah, you can always submit updates. But yeah, basically the way it works, and that's where it gets a little not difficult, but on a case-by-case basis, is that the only thing that's the same for everyone is the sound recording application at the start. And we encourage you to apply for the 10,000, but you can apply for less. But then the part where it changes is that, assuming you do get the grant, then those other components are open. So the radio marketing or the touring, and there you're going to submit. And again, it's actually going to be the same question about your goals. You're going to be talking about that, and it's going to be just for this part. And then you can get other pieces of funding. And all of this add up to 67,500 if you apply fully for everything, which most people don't do that, but you can. Yeah.
And I think we answered in the chat, but just so it's in the recording, people were wondering if you can apply to be a juror even if you're not in Toronto.
Oh yeah, we want people not from Toronto because we don't want to be more Toronto centric than we already are. So the more geographical diversity we have, the more community diversity. So if you're BIPOC, LGBT, any community that you're part of, we want everyone, and also every musical genre too. Because here's the thing: we want to make sure we have enough jurors from every big genre, so that they can give a good feedback on the applications as well. That's something I forgot to mention is if you get rejected, you get feedback from the jurors that tell you what they think you could do better or whatever. So we want to make sure that we have lots of high quality jurors. So yes, please absolutely apply to be a juror.
And I would say that nobody's getting rejected by Factor. Factor is lovely and only has so much money to give out. So you're just not getting awarded money rather than being rejected. A question here about instrumental music. And so say you're a Francophone, so your music has no lyrics. Do you go through Musique Action? Do you go through Factor? How do you determine?
Great question. If you identify primarily as of the Francophone community, I would say, go to Musique Action. However, in the rules, I don't think if it's all instrumental that you wouldn't be allowed to apply to Factor, if that makes sense. As long as the composite, like the music language is in French. And if it's instrumental, then there's no language. So yeah, but I would say probably if you're Francophone, apply to Musique Action. Yeah.
I guess it's your level of comfort with the application and stuff as well in French or English, because it would be in English for Factor.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if French is your first language, then it would be easier to apply in a French agency, funding agency, than in an English one. So yeah.
A few more questions here, and I know we're coming up to the end of our scheduled time. But Anthony, I know you mentioned that if there are extra questions, you're willing to stay a little bit longer as well.
Oh yeah, no problem.
But just to see if we can get through a few more of these, which sections of the JSR are due on October 29th, 2020. So I think still a little bit of confusion.
Sound recording.
How it works. The
sound recording part includes, you have to talk about those goals that I was talking about, and you also have to include your marketing plan in there too. But in terms of the components, so the amounts that you're requesting, which is 10,000 max for sound recording, it's only that's due October 29th. Yeah.
And do we have the number of applicants that typically apply for each program?
That's also in our annual report. I don't have the number in my head though, but I know that it's there somewhere. I can look for it right now if there's no other questions, but otherwise maybe we'll talk about that after.
Well, we've got another question about the average wait time for results.
It's about 3 to 4 months, I believe. Yeah. Normally it's supposed to be, if you apply, I remember, if you apply, let's say for the May deadline, around mid-May, you can get it in July or August. So how many months is that? 3 months? Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the normal expected wait time. But again, depending on juror allocation and stuff like that, sometimes it can take longer. Yeah.
Right. And we've got an answer in the chat here that it's approximately 1,200 applications across both programs each round.
Oh, great. Thank you, Karina. Yeah, she has all the answers.
Excellent. Well, are there any final questions that folks have for Anthony while we've got him on the line? Can we still say that? What do you call video chats?
Yeah, I'm just typing again my email in here. I remember Adrian had a question. Please send me an email. I don't remember what the question was, but there was Adrian and there was someone else. Yeah, if you're watching and you had something that you asked that I didn't answer, please email me and I will get back to you, okay?
Excellent.
I put my email down there. And
That's
wait,
great.
sorry, but before we end this, let me just send all those links because I want people to really look at all that, okay? So give me 1 second here. The marketing plan.
Well, we'll also include these in the email that we'll send out after this.
Perfect, yeah.
So you don't have to worry about copying and pasting everything right now.
Okay, great. Sounds good then.
We can do that after, and then folks will have that as a more permanent resource, and we'll include your email address in that send out as well, so folks will be able to get in touch. And I mentioned it in the chat, but didn't mention it for the recording, but MMF is sort of a regional educational coordinator. So our region is managers across Canada and self-managed artists across Canada. So you're also welcome to reach out to us with questions. So you've got tons of resources with your project coordinator, with your regional educational coordinator, and staff at Factor. So good luck with your applications. I hope we've got a lot of successful folks after these next rounds. And thanks again, Anthony, for sharing all of that information. That was wonderful. And folks, watch out for your email with all of these details and info on upcoming sessions. Hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. Can I say one last thing? Sorry.
Can.
It's just one comment is basically, you know, those programs, there's so much writing everywhere. It's so difficult sometimes to read all those documents. And, you know, I think the biggest reason perhaps that someone doesn't get the funding is just that they didn't get time to go through everything because it's so complicated, and it's understandable, right? And so the only thing I just wanted to say and echo again what you said is, please make use of the resources. So the project coordinators, the regional education coordinators, because we all generally want to help people get funded. And this is our job. We're here, we're answering questions. So if you sign up in our portal, please send us emails, ask us as many questions as you need, because yeah, we want to help. Don't do it all by yourself.
And yeah. I want to just maybe add to that really quickly that don't get discouraged if you don't get funding. It doesn't necessarily even mean that your application was bad. It just means that you scored sometimes even 0.5 of a point or 0.1 of a point behind the last person that got funded. So, you know, ask for that feedback and keep applying.
Yeah, one thing related to that too, actually, is the jurors. But this is, I should have mentioned that, I didn't. The jurors rotate every round. It's not the same, it's randomized. So for instance, sometimes it can really be just bad luck, you know, that you have a song and it just so happens that the group of people maybe didn't like it, but you could submit the same song and maybe that the next round people will love it. It's literally, it's possible. It's randomized to make it as fair as possible. But yeah, just keep in mind that these are real people and they have their own, you know, musical tastes or whatever, and it's random. There's an element of luck as well.
Great. Yeah. All right, well, thank you again, Anthony. And thanks again, everyone, and have a marvelous day out there. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.